Well, moments ago, Senator John McCain spoke at the American Enterprise Institute about the 10-year anniversary. Here's what he told RT about why Iraq is in the state it's in today.
You said that this was not a happy ending for the Iraq War. Do you have any other commentary as to what we can expect 10 years later?
No, I really, that's hard to predict, but all the events that have transpired, including yesterday, that it's unraveling, and unfortunately, the United States is no longer a player since we refused to leave a residual force. It was a plan on this administration, and don't let anybody tell you anything else.
Well, 10 years later, hundreds of thousands of lives, trillions of dollars spent. What is the result of it all? Earlier, I was joined by former Alaskan Senator Mike Gravel and Sarah Flounders, co-director of the International Action Center. She's also the author of the book you see right there, War Without Victory. I started out by asking Senator Gravel, was it worth it?
It was a criminal act. I mean, if we adhere to the Nuremberg principle, the United States committed a criminal act. We know who the criminals are, and for some reason we don't prosecute them. There's really something wrong with our national morality.
Now, Sarah, what do you think? Are we better off today than we were 10 years ago? And is Iraq better off?
Iraq is much worse off, and this was a horrendous crime against humanity, against the people of Iraq, the total destruction of Iraq, which had the highest literacy in the region and today the lowest, the destruction of health care, of the standard of living on every measure. A quarter of the Iraqi people today dead, disabled, or dislocated. Millions of refugees. That is a crime, and yet it was also a complete failure for U.S. strategic interests, a howling blunder on every count, and these criminals who launched this war based on total lies, they should be prosecuted.
Now, when Saddam Hussein was toppled, some back then and still today say that Saddam Hussein was a dictator that systematically tortured and killed his own people. And those that defend the war in Iraq say the world is safer and better off without him. Senator, what do you say to them?
It's foolishness. Saddam Hussein was a thug. There's no question about that. He killed a lot of his own people, but he was not a threat to the United States, and he was not a threat to the world. This was part of a neocon plan, the far conservatives who wanted to, develop American hegemony across the world, starting with Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, now Syria, and we're repeating the same lead up to a war with Iran, and it's being led by none other than the President of the United States, who felt we don't look back, so we don't prosecute the criminals, and now we're about to repeat the same thing over again. When the President says that we can do anything we want with Iran, and everything's on the table, most Americans don't realize that there's a doctrine within the presidency, the White House, that the president can launch a nuclear war on his own decision, without the Congress, without anybody else. He has that kind of power, and it's been stated so.
And you know, here we are during this anniversary, and a lot of times we see these things in retrospect. I want to take a look at the newspaper headlines 10 years ago today, when the war was started. The first one there is from the Chicago Sun-Times, says, "War. Bush opens with surgical strikes at Iraqi leaders." From Connecticut, airstrikes target Hussein. Bush describes actions as opening stages of a broad and concentrated campaign to free the Iraqi people. And another cover there, North Carolina missiles rain, from North Carolina, that says missiles rain on defiant Saddam. So I want to ask you, Sarah, did the media give the invasion more credibility?
Well, the invasion, shock and awe, was really on every standard terror against a whole population, an effort to create a total collapse. The very fact that it failed, that is an important lesson for the people of the whole world. But today is also the second anniversary of the U.S.-NATO war that destroyed Libya. This week, it's the second anniversary of the war for regime change to destabilize Syria. The drone attacks that take place every single day against Pakistan and a whole number of other countries, these are all assaults on the sovereignty of countries around the world, and it's a crime that is continuing. And the emboldened, U.S. was actually emboldened that they staged a war that was clearly criminal by its very nature, and no one here was charged for it. So that aggressive appetite in different form in Libya, different form in Syria, new threats on Iran, but very, very dangerous for the people of the world and the people right here in the U.S. And we should take note, along with the terrible destruction for the Iraqi people, the expose this week of the U.S. role in torture, in the death squads, in the civil war, openly fomenting it. These are the kind of crimes that were committed and that there should really be a responsibility for today. And the crimes continue in another way, too. 40% of the more than 1 million U.S. soldiers who served in Iraq today suffer from post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injuries. That's a horrendous toll right there. The cost of the war, over $2 trillion when medical care and long-term care are considered. So we're paying an enormous amount, and the people of the world are paying highly for these criminal wars.
Yeah, we're seeing the human costs and the enormous financial costs. Senator, here we are 10 years later. Do you think that there should have been more alarm bells before invading? Should we have heard more cautionary, critical voices, whether it be from government officials or from the media?
Well, our entire institutions, the media, the Congress, the White House, all failed the American people, and the American people themselves are not free from culpability in this regard. Because when we saw this violation, this invasion of another country as a criminal act, it didn't take long. That was within a year you knew that this was a criminal act. The American public did not react to that. The American media right now, which marginalizes any thought of a serious investigation of 9/11, which triggered this entire situation for the neocons to be able to pursue American hegemony in the world, matched with our physical power and our control of energy around the world. What are Americans doing? You know, there's an old cliche, and that is, if you kill one person, it's murder. If you kill 1 million, well, that's foreign policy. That's exactly the way we act. There's a gap between American morality as individuals and between the morality of the nation as a whole, and we don't seem to react to that, and that makes us culpable as Americans in the crimes that we see.
We just have a minute left. I want to ask you, I guess, after all this, what lessons have we learned?
None.
Well, I think we've learned never to...
Sorry.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Senator saying none.
Sarah,
what do you think? What lessons have we learned? Hopefully one or a couple, something. Have we learned anything from all of this?
Never to trust the corporate media, which is actually aligned with the banks, the oil corporations, the military corporations in this country, and to rely on mobilizing the people themselves. Millions of people opposed the U.S. war on Iraq in huge demonstrations worldwide. In the U.S., literally millions, thousands and thousands of actions were organized. I was very much part of that 10 years ago and still continuing to this day. We need to do that much more forcefully. We can't accept this, and we have to resist it, and we also have to resist the lies of the U.S. corporate media that is really a public relations arm for these wars.
All right. Appreciate you both very much for coming on and your insightful remarks on this on the 10-year anniversary of the war in Iraq. That was former Alaskan Senator Mike Gravel and Sarah Flounders, co-director of the International Action Center.